based
Right.
on falsehoods and stigma and stereotypes, Hollywood stereotypes that get
Yeah.
perpetuated all the time. Even
Yep.
though Hollywood, the entertainment industry, they're like doing land acknowledgments, they're doing all this stuff,
Yep.
but they still
Representation
are so
matters, just not for
yeah,
us.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, for psychopaths, it's like whatever.
Welcome to Fearful Symmetry, the Psychopathy Spectrum Podcast, where we talk about psychopathy and other forms of neurodivergence. I'm your host, Lillyth Quillan. This week's guest is M.E. Thomas, author of Confessions of a Sociopath. We discuss how autism and psychopathy are alike, why we need people with psychopathy, and what exactly chicken people are.
I am so excited. I am here with the illustrious M.E. Thomas, who is the author of Confessions of a Sociopath. And we all do that like little colon thing where we have the really long title. So it is, what is it? It is Confessions of a Sociopath, a life spent hiding in plain sight. I love it. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you too.
Yeah, and we've kind of been, in the same sphere. We both were on the board of advisors.
Same Zoom meetings.
Yep, for Psychopathy is. And that's right. So I guess we've technically sort of I guess we've been in the same virtual space rather than, physical space. But so the very, very first thing that I want to say to you, I saw your video with Madame Halloween, who I actually know, but you said something in that video that it's just like it was a punch to the gut, especially as a mother. So I want you to know that you're my people too.
Nice.
Like you count, you are people, and you are part of our society. And if being in our society doesn't work for you, then our society doesn't work.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're very welcome. See, I'll get all verklempt and you can just, not tear up, and we'll just be sort of doing what our neurobiology tells us to do, right?
Exactly. Can we do other than that? Can we really? How much ability do we have to do other than that?
Well, we can, but it takes a lot of training. Right?
Snipers learn to.
Yep. Yeah, I am definitely like my default startle reflex is freeze. And I just sit there and I don't breathe. And, but I did through years of martial arts training get to the point where I can, continue to breathe and my brain can work and I can, sort of figure out what am I going to do with what trajectory and, think my way through that. But it's definitely it's not my default. And it was a lot of work. And it was way harder for me than it was for most of the people in the class. So, it's possible, but it's very effortful.
Yeah.
And so you are my inaugural interview, and part of why I'm so excited about this is that, believe it or not, you actually provided me, or your website provided me with the best advice and probably the only advice that actually worked, right? Because, like you contacted a bajillion experts and they're like, oh, well, you just do X and Y and Z, and then X and Y and Z doesn't work. And you're like, what? But somewhere on your, I don't know if do you still have the forum up on there, or did you take that down, or?
I think the forum wherever it was being hosted closed down or something. So okay. I don't think it's up anymore. Now I have a Discord server if people are interested.
Oh, yeah. Tell us how to get to or I guess just give me the link and I can drop that into the. Yeah. Okay.
I think, yeah, the Discord server links, I think, are only good for like 2 weeks, but I'm happy to give all of your listeners a link.
Awesome. Yeah. Or how do we find it if the link isn't, if the link is,
I think
if
people
the link
just,
is,
yeah, if people ask me in like the comment section to any of my social media, then I can give it to you, or you can contact me at sociopathworld@gmail.com. That's my email address.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. So I'll make sure that I put that in the links. But there had been other parents like me who had asked, like, what if we have a kid like this, what do we do? And everybody had the same 2-word answer. Harry's Code.
Oh, interesting.
And, yeah. And so I then went and watched 8 seasons of Dexter. I subjected myself to 8 seasons of this thing, thinking I, as a parent, will just memorize Harry's Code, and then I can instill Harry's Code into my child, and then it'll be great. But turns out it should be more like Dexter's Code. Because it wasn't like, it only worked for Dexter because he has a very specific, I mean, as I think do all people on the psychopathy spectrum, right? Like everybody has their own personal code as to what is acceptable to them and what is not. And that was kind of what I did with my kid, was watched 8 seasons of Dexter and realized I didn't know my kid at all, and had to watch him for months and be like, oh, who is this person, right? Because this brainwashing that we all have from society, like all children are born the same and everybody's a blank slate, and all of that stuff, it doesn't really seem, I mean, I would love to know your experience as a child, and how did the world occur to you from like your earliest memory? Do you remember feeling different?
I think first of all, it's interesting to kind of think, somebody just shared this link on the Discord. It was like a screenshot of somebody's paper. Their suggestion was there's a difference between the term sociopath and psychopath, in terms of psychopaths are like born with a low degree of being able to be socialized, like a low susceptibility to socialization, to being kind of guided, like in this socialized sort of way, to try to like, okay, your peer group, your parents, your, everything that we kind of impose on people, your culture, your religion. And then they said that the sociopaths, in their mind, this was the distinction, get that low degree of socialization from their parenting, kind of from the way that they were raised. I thought this is kind of an interesting way to put it. Like, it makes a little bit of sense to me, because that's honestly how it felt being a child, is that it felt like people were trying to socialize me, and I was just like Teflon to it. I
love that.
Nothing's gonna stick, really. Yeah, like you can try all you want. And sometimes I was aware of them trying, and sometimes I kind of wasn't, like, and I think that was a little bit creepy to like adults and stuff, who would try to like explain to me things like, we don't do this, this is hurtful. And I'd be like, but is it hurtful to do this or something? And they'd be like, no. And I was like, oh, what's the difference? And they'd be like, like just have a hard time with it, because it's like stuff that other normal kids can be shamed into. I couldn't be shamed into doing things that other kids were afraid of. I wasn't afraid of, like, if anything, I sort of liked pushing adults' buttons. I didn't see it as like a thing to avoid, like, I don't want to make my parents mad or something. Why would I why would I care if my parents are mad? What are they going to do to me?
Right.
It's like a free-for-all.
Right. Oh my God. So I love, you have so much that you just said there that I want to try to, hopefully I'll remember all of it. And I really definitely did want to talk about terms. And before I say this, I want to sort of, do the caveat of like, I'm very fond of saying, if you ask 5 different experts, you'll get 6 different answers.
Absolutely.
Right. So when I use the term psychopathy, I am talking about like what you were saying, right? It's an inborn wiring thing. And the word sociopath, it's literally a linguistic thing, right? Socio coming from society. So sociopathy is by definition something that comes from the external environment, just because that's literally what the word means. And I got that from Kent Keel, and I like it. Like it. I'm a word nerd, so I love that. But I think like it's so fascinating that you like, I love that Teflon thing. Like it just sort of bounces off of you, and like not being afraid of that, of getting the adults around you mad. Like that's, the rest of us, we get, and I also come at this conversation as somebody who, as I was diagnosed with autism last year. And much like you, right? Like I knew I was different than the rest of the kids. I knew I was weird, and there was some social stuff going on that didn't make any sense to me. And I love your whole thing about chicken people. And I would love for you to explain chicken people to my viewers, because that's freaking just mwah, chef's kiss.
Chicken people is just kind of like everybody who can be socialized. This is an interesting thing. I find that like psychopaths and autism spectrum disorder people tend to have like this joint reality of sharing the world with mostly kind of like, I guess sometimes people call them normies, but there's like a subsection of normies that's particularly invested in certain things. Like they're like the types of people who get so nervous chatter, as you're boarding or getting off a plane. They're the types of people who, like nervous chatter is their dominant kind of characteristic, but also just those things aren't done, and like no desire to look behind the curtain, just totally fine to experience the world as it is, but also like a little bit of antagonism towards people who do not kind of uphold the illusion of various life illusions that exist.
For sure.
Where, they can get like annoyed, but they're very prone to being in groups. So like joiners, 10 out of 10 joiners, like don't kind of like to independently think, don't really even think maybe that thinking is like an important thing. And in some ways, like good for them, because I bet it's awesome to just kind of like go with the flow. It would be like being in a lazy river all your life, just like sitting in this lazy river, and it just keeps circling and circling and circling, because the culture changes enough, that you're getting different experiences. And if you want to like play life on easy mode or just enjoyable mode, I bet it's kind of like nice that way. But I mean, chicken people, they can have like, my girlfriend always says, they're chicken people, that's fine. It's their chicken feelings that are hard to deal with. Because they feel upset about certain things where you're like, I just cannot handle right now trying to even accommodate you in the slightest about this weird thing that you're upset about.
Yeah.
Like, I just like, okay, I get that is your honest feeling, but like a real unwillingness to kind of separate like feeling from fact, like I'm feeling this way, but that doesn't necessarily mean it has to go this particular way, or that's what's actually happened.
Right.
So that's chicken people. I mean, like a tendency to just kind of, there was like the psychopath I talked with, Pretty Morbid is the pseudonym, where he talked about people who are more like being people versus like people like very low agency, like they're just, they really are just existing in the moment, like in probably a way that feels really zen, and great.
Right.
Like I wish I could be more in the moment like them, honestly. Versus people who have like a sense of kind of choosing, like they have like agency or a sense of agency about their life. And the chicken people, they're all kind of this being kind of way of being. And I have like the chicken is not meant to be a derogatory term. I forget even how we came up with chicken. I don't even think it was the animal. I think it was like the food chicken that I was saying, that makes somebody a chicken person. But
yeah. I see, like a food, like a chicken person as opposed to a burger person or a.
Yeah, kind of like bland. But I love chicken. Fried chicken is like my favorite food. So in that way, I have a love-hate relationship with chicken people.
I actually, so I took it as the actual bird, and my dad.
Now I like it that way.
My dad used to work on a property where there were chickens, and like the group of chickens would literally peck each other to death. Like it was really, but they'd all gang up on this one chicken, and I relate to that, and I feel like people with psychopathy and people with autism probably have more in common than we don't. Like one of the things
I'm glad you said that and not me. People can't attack you for saying it.
Oh, I'm sure they will. I mean, never read the comments, right? If you can help it, like, holy crap. Especially for somebody on the autism spectrum, because of course we take that like, that is definitely, I don't have the I don't care button. I have the opposite end of that. But like, I mean, just for like a really simple example, right? If you see somebody you haven't seen in a while, or you walk into a doctor's office, right? And they're like, hi, how are you? But they don't want to know how you are. Like, why are you asking me a question that you literally want me to lie to? Like, lying is the only acceptable answer. Or, I mean, maybe maybe I actually am great that day or whatever, but like, we're still supposed to, oh, I'm great. How are you? Right? Like but don't ask me how I am if you don't want to know. And then, if we actually like answer, heaven forbid we answer the question and then they're like, oh my God, like, that's just like, there's a certain amount of lying that is expected of us. And I mean, like, I feel like so much is really, really unfair for what is, I mean, I guess, in both of our communities, but like really particularly around like people with psychopathy, like, oh, everybody just be yourself. Be yourself. Well, except for you. We want you to lie to us. And then we're mad that you lie to us. Except that we demand that you lie to us in order to make us feel comfortable. So what we really mean is we want you to fake it so that we feel comfortable, but not fake it, like fake it perfectly well, that we just don't, we don't know that you're faking it, which is like, it's so disingenuous.
Yeah. And to say like, it's something that people outside of psychopathy are certainly familiar with. Like there are plenty of people who feel a societal pressure to mask for any reason,
Right.
Female, religious, culturally, politically, neurodivergence, like that. There's, you're gay or whatever. And it is
Right.
kind of interesting, like what we accept and don't accept. Like if you look at the 20th century, like just for being gay, parts of the 20th century was fine. Certain locations, fine.
Right.
Other locations, other times, other whatever. It's totally random. It reminds me of when I went to India for the first time.
Nice.
It was very last minute though. It was like kind of a 10-day like lead in, and I was really busy before leaving. because I was, trying to get everything done or whatever. So I didn't have like that much time to research. That's on me. But I knew I had a guide. So I was like, okay, I don't have to plan. But I didn't do the planning I normally do. The wardrobe I packed was not appropriate for India. And it wasn't crazy either. I had like these
not appropriate
like
how?
They weren't pants, but they weren't shorts either. They went past the knees, type outfit. And the rickshaw driver I was first with was like, like people are leering at you because you're showing calf, you're showing ankle. And I was like, are you kidding me? And he's like, no, we have to go to a store. They're not going to let you into some of these sites. So we went and I was like, okay, I'm buying like whatever outfit this guy's helping me choose. Yeah, choose an outfit to wear. And I was like, saris are showing midriff. Saris are showing arms. Saris are showing all this other stuff. But saris do not show calf. Definitely not calf.
Right.
And it's so weird because what is sexualized in that culture then is calf, because calf is like the inaccessible thing. So it's just kind of interesting thinking about like how arbitrary it is. You guys, like, there's nothing, people are like, well, this part of the body's inherently sexualized or something. No, It's not. Like, you guys are making up the rules just all the time. It's just all the time kind of making up the rules and then kind of thinking, why aren't you abiding by the rules? Well, part of it's because I'm Teflon. And so some of it I'm ignorantly ignoring, and some of it I'm willfully ignoring. It's true, because I'm like, there's no way I'm living my life that way. Like, my life already is kind of like a hollow reed. There's no way I'm going to like make it worse by doing the stupid things that you guys prioritize that I have like even less investment in than you do.
Yeah. I heard oh man, I was listening to another science communicator who's on the autism spectrum, and they were talking about how there had been this study that came out recently, and what they found out was they took people with, so the way that the study was phrased is it was people with low autistic traits and people with high autistic traits. So it was basically neurotypicals and people with autism, but they didn't, I guess not everybody had a diagnosis, but they were doing some brain scans while they were cooperating with other people like them. So it turns out that people with autism get along better with people with autism, and the people who have the low autistic traits get along better with each other. And one of the things that they found was that the social parts of the brain, they would sync up with the people who have the low autistic traits. And the people with high autistic traits, their brains also synced up, but it was the prefrontal cortex. It was the executive functioning part of the brain. So like it literally just bypassed our entire social network. And they didn't do, I would have loved to have seen what would have happened with people on the psychopathy spectrum, but I suspect it would probably be similar to what, happened with people on the autism spectrum, because there is a certain, logic, and like I grok you guys better than I grok neurotypical people, because I'm like, why are we lying here, but then lying is bad? Like, how do I don't understand.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard not to think that it's just like the oppression of a majority, because like I remember, I tell the story all the time in law school, in my criminal law class. It's my first year of law school. I'm learning about how if you walk in on your spouse cheating on you, they're having sex with another person, you grab a gun, you shoot both of them, you might not do any time at all. You might you may be temporarily insane. And we just kind of think, yeah, of course you'd be temporarily insane, and why would we put you in jail? You'll never be in that situation again. And we think that's totally a normal reason to kill people. And I think that may be normal to you guys just because you're the plurality or the majority. But to me, I'm shocked. Like if I were designing a criminal justice system, I definitely wouldn't think, okay, this person who cannot be trusted not to kill people.
Right.
Like if they get too emotional, then they will kill people. And that's okay. We expect that. And so we allow for it, and we just let them continue walking amongst us in society, that I think, oh, like why and how?
Right.
Like it just makes no sense to me, that kind of the things that they're afraid of. They're allegedly afraid of psychopaths being violent. And I'm like, have you seen a man? Like who is more violent actually?
I was just going to say that, like that whole thing of like, oh my God, I walked in on my spouse and I lost it. Like that probably stems from men being able to kill their wives because wives were property.
Who knows what it's from? Yeah, it could be. But even, I mean, like women, it's the same thing. Modern criminal law, women get away with it just as much, but it's just their kind of beliefs about what is acceptable are
right.
It's like rules for thee, not for me. It's like there's always an exception, for their types of stuff. And because I get that all the time, like I got this response recently from somebody in like a YouTube comment about how it was totally fine to fire me from being a law professor. And they were like, yeah, you can't have a psychopath for a law professor. It's like they kept saying, it's unfortunate, and maybe they could have handled it better and not like banned her from being like within 1,000 yards of campus or anybody affiliated with the school. like maybe they could have done better about the whole process and stuff, paid her off or something. But unfortunately, yeah, you just can't have a psychopath as a law professor or whatever, because you would never know as the student whether or not they were manipulating you. And I thought, this is education. What do you think education is? Like if I go to a Spanish teacher, I sure as hope that they're trying to get me to speak Spanish. And how do you think it happens?
Yeah, I mean, it is literally manipulating people to think a particular way, which, I'm betting that person went through the same education system and, sort of absorbed that hook, line, and sinker. But like, what's really interesting is if you took that person and you mentioned something about, the early white settlers who were here and how, they had their religious communities. And then if there was somebody that didn't toe the line with whatever particular religion they happened, that they would, I mean, in some cases, so I am, my best friend loves to tease me that I'm Mayflower white, because one of my ancestors came in on the,
I also have a Mayflower ancestor.
Oh my God. That's, yes, I love it. And so one of the things, I was reading this like history book, and they were talking about how the people at Plymouth Plantation, and that's what it was called. It wasn't really Plymouth Colony, that's what we call it now in modern times, but it was at the time it was called Plymouth Plantation. And they were saying that the people at Plymouth Plantation, right, our ancestors were actually really, really forward thinking, because they didn't murder the Quakers. Like they would just put them in the stockades for a few days and then excise them, right? But like if you looked at any religious community from back then and you talked about how they had shunned somebody who didn't follow the same religion, the same people who were like, you can't have a psychopath do blah, 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 right, would be like, oh my God, I can't believe that those people shunned these people for their, religious belief. But you're doing that to somebody for a neurological condition. Like, how is that any different?
Yeah, it's crazy. So like when the book came out, I was kind of like, I was at a crossroads in my career. I was an assistant professor. I was an assistant professor at a law school in Texas, and I could have stayed there and like gotten tenure, I think they were like very happy with me. I had been that year a visiting professor at a school in San Francisco. Golden Gate University. I have no
Yeah,
qualms calling them out. So I'm at that school, when it comes out. I'm teaching there. I was meant to go teach at BYU. I had a teaching contract for the next fall to go teach at BYU. So I had three, kind of intentionally, I had three different law schools. And I thought, well, one of these may pan out. One of them may be like, it's fine actually to have a psychopath professor, because why not? I thought maybe this Catholic school in Texas, because they're Catholic and they just don't care or whatever, they're Texans, maybe the San Francisco school, because they're like hyper liberal, like super, liberal. And they're like, hey, this is nothing that she chose or can control, and it's totally fine. Like, why would this be a problem? Or maybe it's BYU, maybe it's the Mormons. I'm Mormon. They're going to be like, we have this belief that everybody's like a child of God. And so we're not going to fire somebody for being a psychopath. They can still be a law professor, but no, like every single one of them. Actually, the Texan Catholics came closest, I would say. Like I got the most positive feedback from them. Yeah.
That is fascinating. Sorry, I'm just trying to plug my phone in. I forgot to plug it in before we started there. But I mean, I am so horrified by the way that, and like massive props to you for coming out. Like it's a huge, like it seems like everything, I mean, it's obviously it's a different time period now than when you first came out, but like it seems like everything out there, every article, every whatever, it's like how to get rid of every psychopath in your life, how to ditch the psychopaths, how to, spot like, and all the clickbait too. It's like this one tip will help you, spot a psychopath and get rid of them, or like whatever. And it's just like, what? Why are you doing that? I mean, I loved your interviews with Inigo Montoya. I loved that because you guys were talking about what people with psychopathy can give to the community. And, you guys are super important. You guys are super important. Like judges, lawyers, surgeons. I mean, the last thing you want is a surgeon who is so empathetic they can't actually like cut into you, right? Like you guys are so integral, and I would even argue that probably most of the leaps that humanity has made, right, those have all been from bold, risk-taking people who are, probably very low fear, right? Because they're willing to do that. So
yeah, it's hard to see any argument really for just being kind of anti-psychopaths in general. I especially think it's really hard to see the liberal argument for it. Like that really surprised me. But I should say too, like, nor am I saying, and some of my fellow psychopaths do say this actually, nor am I saying that we should get like special treatment. I used to have this tweet that was pinned that says, I'm not saying that psychopaths aren't responsible for their actions, but they're certainly not responsible for being psychopaths. So I think it is an open question. How much are psychopaths responsible for their actions? I think people can kind of differ. I think that's like reasonable minds can differ about that quite a bit. And we're really not sure, like, I don't think anybody can say with certainty, it's definitely this, we have all the evidence in the world that we need. And we can with certainty say that, it's this amount of control over their actions.
Right.
But it also is 100% certain, though, that they don't choose to be psychopaths. There's at no point, it reminds me like one time my dad was talking to, like a fellow kind of legal professional. And this was like decades ago, but was talking about, like, I think it was Prop 8 in California, the anti-gay marriage movement. Yeah. And he was kind of saying, he said something about it being a choice or whatever. And the person who actually was pretty conservative was like, at what point, like, what day did you choose to be straight? You know, at what point were you like, I'm choosing heterosexual. That's my choice is heterosexual. Honestly, with my dad, I do kind of wonder. I feel like he maybe is bisexual or something. So maybe he did have more of a choice, but it's like a total thing with psychopaths. There's no psychopath who is like, I chose to be a psychopath. So, I mean, what do you do with that? I mean, a lot of people will give me like, oh, it's like, you have to do what's right for the herd or something. And, you have to like, when you're making an omelet, you got to crack some eggs. And that's why we have to get rid of psychopaths. I can kind of see that argument a little bit if all you had was kind of like a very close-knit society, like 100 people or something, that has little to no interaction with any external groups of people. I could kind of see, at that point, in certain tribal societies, like they always say, like the psychopath, there were words for psychopath in like indigenous Alaskan dialects or whatever.
Oh my God.
I
used to know that one. Crap. But
where they just kind of like, like just have them, they would have different ways of dealing with them to kind of not have to deal with them, honestly, to like let them go, to be like, well, you're not part of our group anymore, maybe, know. But if you have any sort of interactions with any other group, let's say you're ever at war with anybody in the past century, you're ever having any sort of skirmish, you're ever having any sort of issue with somebody, or you think it might happen in the next century, it's like, do you want to have inside your group, do you want to have psychopaths on your team if you know that the other group has psychopaths on their team? Number one, like, that's always going to be kind of an advantage, not just because psychopaths are good soldiers, they probably are, but just because you have a diversity of thought, and I have come to become such a believer in diversity in general, just as a very stable, strong position, and it makes sense if you think about kind of threads, having different threads in fabric or whatever, like the more diversity there is spread out into all these different things, the more robust you are. Your species is robust. Like if you can only handle being in like 80% to 90% humidity as a species, like some of these rainforest, like tree frogs or whatever, that is very fragile. Like you're not going to survive climate change, if in these types of situations. So the diversity, you may not see the point of the diversity in your life today in a relationship with a psychopath, but it's also like, then probably nobody's forcing you to be in a relationship with a psychopath. That's a controversial statement.
I mean, I would say probably in the beginning not, but there may be a point at which now the person with psychopathy is forcing you to stay in the relationship with them. Possibly. Just depends on the... by beating the shit out of you or trying to kill you.
Yeah. I'm still, though, like, maybe in certain cultures, in the cultures that maybe if you are being like a sex trafficked, like human trafficking victim, but it just seems like it's the exception and not the rule, I think, so like the idea that people are stuck with them somehow, often if they're kind of complaining, and I'm like, go ahead and complain about psychopaths, they're doing as much stuff to complain about, I'm sure, as chicken people and more, et cetera, et cetera. I also think, though, it's just like a matter of like at a certain point, like I think that everybody with personality disorders responds ultimately well to personal boundaries. I think of like, is it Cesar Millan who does the dog training?
I don't know.
And he's like, you have to alpha them. And just like, he like the pet whisperer or dog whisperer.
Oh, yeah.
If you alpha the psychopath or a narcissist or whatever, and you're just like consistently being like, no, this is consistent and you can leave, but I'm always going to respond in this particular way. Like, I mean, I think the people with personality disorders respond really well to that. So even to the extent people are like, it's so terrible to live amongst psychopaths, I think, number one, it's usually a choice. Let's say usually. Number two, you can still enforce your boundaries. It's not like...
Maybe we could go with often. I mean, it depends though, right? Because
I will say usually. I can accept you're often.
Because it depends on the, I think it depends on the, right? So we have all the people like you and like Inigo Montoya who are not, they're not criminals, right? But then we often, the chicken people and everybody else who's talking about this sort of stuff, right? Like we have this, I think, very unreal definition of what a person like that is. And it's usually, Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer, and you know what I mean? Like that's kind of what we think of. And there are definitely very violent people who are on the psychopathy spectrum, but then there's people like you who aren't violent at all. I've known people on the psychopathy spectrum who are freaking amazing parents. Never hit their kids, always there for their kids. Their kids had no idea until, they were an adult, and finally the parent was like, "Oh yeah, by the way," right? Like there are all kinds of people on this spectrum that I don't think we think of when we're, kind of talking about that. And I mean, there's reasons for that. Most of which have to do with the media and Robert Bloch writing the book Psycho, and then Alfred Hitchcock making the movie Psycho, and then that's what we kind of think of as that. And everybody sort of associates that whole thing, and we still, like, I cannot watch a single television episode without the word psychopath being thrown around as an insult, right? And it's
every time I see it, I respond psychopath or sociopath, whichever one they use, is a disorder, not a pejorative. Even Olivia Rodrigo has it in one of her prominently featured in one of her songs. It rhymes. It's one of the rhyming words in one of her songs.
Oh, I got to give props for that. I actually am a big Russian rap fan, and there's this Russian rapper named Oxymiron, because his name is Miron and it's OX. It's like OXXY, Oxy. But he rhymes osteopath and sociopath, and I was like, all right, I gotta good rhyme scheme there. But like, I mean, seriously, I started noticing since I wrote the piece, No One is a Psychopath for Psychopathy Is, where I started, advocating for person first language. And then again in, what was it? It was just an open letter to Hollywood and the entertainment industry, where I was like, can you please stop? Can you stop using this language? Because it's everywhere and it's always an insult. It's like, God, there was one thing in, oh my God, what is it? Resident Alien, right? Where the sheriff is like, he's eating pie and oatmeal together. He's a damn psychopath. And I'm like, come on, you guys. Like, nowhere in the diagnostic criteria does it say eats pie and oatmeal together, right? Like, it's not, and you would never do that for any other group of people. Like any other group of people, and everybody would be up in arms. Like, you would be canceled.
Yeah. Yeah.
So by the way, I actually pulled the indigenous terminology. So from Lakota, and this was from an interview with Zon McLarnon, who's in Dark Winds, and he was talking about this. I don't know that he necessarily used the word psychopathy, but he was talking, like, the character on the show very clearly had psychopathy, and the word is, hopefully I'm pronouncing this correctly, it's washichu, and it means one who takes the fat, or one who takes the good part of the meat and takes it for himself and does not share it, which I thought was really interesting. And then there's Kulangeta from the Inuit, from the Bering Strait people, a man who repeatedly lies and cheats and steals and things and does not pay attention to reprimands. which I
Does
thought
not
was
pay
really
attention to
interesting.
reprimands, I think, is like the main one that makes me think, yeah, that's probably a psychopath.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. This was part of the reason that I asked in the email if you grokked neuroscience. There was a study that came out December 20th of 23, where it was a longitudinal study, which just, is a fancy way of saying, they did it over time. And they found when doing fMRI of these newborn babies up until the age of 3, that the wiring that was consistent all throughout that, actually, it was present at birth. It predated any of the behaviors, and it stayed relatively consistent. And one of the things I found really striking was in your interview with Inigo, was he was like, no, I was 5 and I knew that I was different from the other kids. And that's just, I mean, I think it's obviously, and I know you do too, like it's super important to get early intervention for help with the problematic bits, right? I mean, we do that with kids with autism, right? We're not trying to cure the autism, but we are trying to help these children with problematic behaviors. And that's, I mean, children. Help,
Yeah, it's
help
children.
the children.
Yeah. Yeah, you'd think that the children would be an easy one. That's a really interesting part. Like, let's imagine that people come in, they're like, no, psychopathy still is a problem. Jamie, you haven't convinced me. Then I'd be like, if it's such a problem, then why have you not put any funding to understand it? Why have you not put any funding to try to treat it? Why have you not put any funding to early detection?
Yep.
Why have you not put any funding to figure out, hey, is there anything with the children that we can learn from the children who end up developing this, or however you kind of think about it. It's so weird to think, like, for instance, we have schizophrenic people amongst us. We have bipolar people amongst us. Do they have, I'll use your word, problematic.
Right.
Do they have some behaviors that cause distress to themselves and others? Yes, they do. They definitely do. And do we have treatments for them? Yes.
Yeah.
And I remember actually reaching out. There was like a schizophrenic law professor. I think she taught at USC. I like hesitate to kind of call her out because, like, who knows what she could have done, but I remember kind of reaching out to her and being like, hey, do you have like any desire to kind of support me in this? And I forget if she replied or just kind of ignored it. Which, cold email or something. Who knows whether she even saw it. But I just thought, why is she allowed to be a professor? She's schizophrenic. And I am not allowed to be a law professor. I'm a psychopath. So I think even that is really interesting. Like, if nothing else, as you say, for the children, I guess it's really hard to get funding. The nonprofit that we were both on the advisory board for, Psychopathy Is, and then Society for the Prevention of Disorders of Aggression, SPDA, could not get funding.
I know.
It's like Autism Speaks or Autism Anything can get funding.
Yep.
If it's about psychopaths, even if it's about children psychopaths, which they're not called psychopaths, they're called different things, but they have disorders of aggression. It's like you still can't get funding. I just don't understand how people can continue to sort of justify this. I also think it just looks poor. It's like it's going to be, eventually it's going to happen, and then people, and that's actually how I replied to that guy who told me, of course you can't have a law professor who's a psychopath, is I said, when the book came out, you were in the majority. You were in the strong majority. A lot of people agreed with you. Now, no, you may still be in the plurality, but you're not in the strong majority. And it's trending that way. And eventually you're going to have to ask yourself, like, you're going to have to abandon your chicken feelings about this. And have to ask yourself, like, real questions. Like, is there any actual reason that justifies me dehumanizing and treating very poorly and discriminatorily an entire class of people based on something that I have the slimmest understanding of,
Right.
based on
Right.
falsehoods and stigma and stereotypes, Hollywood stereotypes that get
Yeah.
perpetuated all the time. Even
Yep.
though Hollywood, the entertainment industry, they're like doing land acknowledgments, they're doing all this stuff,
Yep.
but they still
Representation
are
matters,
so,
just not for
yes,
us.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, for psychopaths, it's like whatever.
Yeah.
My girlfriend says I should write Olivia Rodrigo, that she probably would be receptive to changing the lyric.
That's actually not without precedent. A friend of mine was
Mhm.
telling me that Lizzo had used the word spastic in a song, and she got some letters from people who were like, can you not? That's really offensive. And she actually changed the lyrics to the song. I mean, I think it's really, it's important. And I certainly would have, because I'm definitely the email, writing type. But like all of these things, because I don't necessarily watch TV shows when they're on right like now. So like I'm watching them but they're already over. So there's no point in me writing to the writers and being like, hey, can you not? But I also like, there are people like you, there are people like Inigo Montoya, there are, all kinds of other people besides these harmful stereotypes. And obviously something you guys are doing is working. Therefore, this whole myth about there's no treatment for it, well, obviously there is, or nobody would ever change. Right?
I think this is a controversial thing because to the extent they're looking at treatment, the researchers I've talked to about this, they seem to be more interested in trying to evoke the sensation of empathy. And I just
Yes.
think, why are we fixated on this? Like, we have a book against empathy. We have a growing understanding that empathy is a trade-off, really, that there are many different types of people who experience empathy in different ways.
Yeah.
Autistic people experience empathy in different ways than non-autistic people experience it. Like, are we trying to get autistic people to experience empathy in the same way as non-autistic people? Is that what we think of as like good treatment? Like, what is with the obsession with empathy?
Well,
I just replied back and was like, I'm not interested in like this concept of empathy. I don't think that's a treatment. What is that treating?
So what I say is that if I could get rid of the word empathy, I would. If I could completely remove it from the entire English language, I would. Because everybody is so fixated on it, except that the core feature of psychopathy. So if you kind of like, if you look at the humanity spectrum, right? And on one side, you've got the autism spectrum. On the other side, you've got the psychopathy spectrum, right? The sort of core features of these two is that, folks on the autism spectrum, like it's too much sensory input, right? As a sort of overall feature, right? And then for people with, on the psychopathy spectrum, it is a difficulty feeling things, and that could be anywhere, right? It could be feeling emotions. It could be, like Patrick, I'm going to pronounce her last name wrong, but Patrick Ganga, who wrote
Gagne, I think.
Gagne, yeah. But she has trouble
Shout
discerning.
out to Patrick.
Yes, hi. And I'm sorry I butchered her last name, but she talks about in an interview that there was this time she peed her pants at the White House because her powers of interoception were not that great. And so when I see people talk about people with psychopathy and empathy, I'm like, that makes as much sense as being offended that a blind person cannot see you in particular. It's like, oh, but how do you think I feel that you can't see me? You need to be focusing on how your disability makes me feel, and the fact that you can't see me, I feel bad and you need to baby my emotions. Like, no, the problem is well, not necessarily can't, but there is difficulty feeling those things, and it's not about you, right? There is difficulty in feeling love for other people. It's not specifically about you, and quit making it about your feelings. And, I mean, it's ridiculous.
It's also, I mean, it seems so like the sort of blind faith that people have in empathy, as if it's like some sort of God.
Yeah.
That we're all like worshiping this idea of like empathy as being the thing that makes us human. I had somebody say in a comment to me that my cognitive empathy is Timu empathy. I was like, pretty clever, but also wrong way.
Wow.
That's like saying somebody has an artificial leg or something, prosthetic leg, and being like, that's a Timu leg or whatever. Like, okay, it's a little toilet to say something like that to somebody else. And I was like, this is a great example of where empathy leads you, is to be like, psychopaths, no.
Right.
We can't possibly have a psychopath law professor. Those people probably have in their bios, my girlfriend always says, like, hyper empath.
Oh,
Uber
sure.
empath.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, there is this misnomer that empathy is what makes us human. No, what makes us human is having, like a human
DNA
brain.
similar, able to reproduce within the same species.
Right. We generally have, 2 arms and 2 legs, but that's not always true, right? Like we're Homo sapiens. That's the definition. And everybody, like it's the, the whole humanity spectrum that makes us interesting. Oh, yeah. The other thing I love too was when you were talking to, I listened to both your interviews with Inigo this week. So one of the things that he was talking about was how the therapist who's treating him has put down on the paperwork that he's being treated for PTSD. And I wanted to talk just for a second about the irony that in a group of people for whom lying is supposed to be one of the biggest things that we want to fix, the mental health professionals who treat them have to lie in order to get paid to work with the people that they're supposed to stop from lying.
That is one. I'm surprised how little known this is. I'm really glad that you mentioned it. Is that when I tell that to like journalists or other people, they're like, I don't understand. Like, why wouldn't you be able to get treatment? And I said, it would be like treating somebody, it's like gay conversion therapy to the American Psychology Association, right. to whoever these governing bodies are, that you can't, if there's not a known treatment, and there's not a known treatment, then you can't just, what would you treat them with then? It would be like treating somebody's, whatever, like flu with I don't know. It's like hydroxychloroquine to treat,
it's treating somebody for brown eyes is what it is.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and it's also kind of like, it's pseudoscience is what they see it as. And
right.
My own therapist was like, I'm not going to, I definitely can't do that because I'll lose my license. So my official diagnosis with my therapist was personality disorder, otherwise unspecified. He's like, this is fine. But it's so weird because it's like, why are we kind of forcing, like it in not acknowledging that even basic therapy can help, like CBT or something. Right. You basically are forcing the mental health professionals to lie. Sometimes the psychopath to lie. I actually had this thought about a funny TV show would be a psychopath who wants to get better, keeps getting rejected from therapists and decides to start showing up at AA meetings instead, Alcoholics Anonymous,
Right.
because it's kind of like group therapy. It's like just lying, saying it's the drink, but instead it's like the psychopathy that they're talking about. But there's
Wow.
one of the psychopaths I know in the UK, Dorian. You can look up his stuff too. He has his own social media too. Dorian got rejected from so many therapists. I just thought this is terrible, because even if the therapists, like, you have to get somebody who's willing to lie too, willing to lie and willing to treat a psychopath. I wrote I did a Newsweek article and talked about Killing Eve and the Killing Eve portrayal of psychopaths and psychopathy in general. And I said the thing that was most realistic about it was, at one point, the psychopath has to kidnap a therapist
Right.
and tie him up in order to get treatment for the psychopathy. It's wild how different it is, for psychopaths versus every other mental health disorder.
Yeah.
And even legally speaking too, the one people who get it just as bad as we do is pedophilia. Like in California, at least, there's a criminal diversion statute that says if you have a mental health disorder that contributed, it's like significantly or materially, whatever the word is, to your crime, so you're bipolar, you ended up committing this crime, it's because you were off your meds, then instead of you going to prison, you can be diverted into a mental health kind of treatment program for you that's going to address this. But the people who cannot do that, it used to be 3 people. It used to be borderline personality disorder, psychopaths, antisocial personality disorder, and pedophilia. Which I thought borderline personality disorder, that's especially stigma, because there's DBT. They have dialectical behavioral therapy where they're completely able to treat borderline personality disorder. And since then, in the past 4-ish, 5-ish years, they allow they allow borderline people to do the diversion program, but it's still psychopaths are excluded, and so are pedophiles excluded from. They just have to go to prison. There's no help.
And I know quite a bit about that arena, because before I got involved with stuff around psychopathy, I actually used to do a bunch of I'm sort of always on, I guess I've always been on team, I want this to stop, and the only way to make it stop is to work with the people who are doing it, right? And so I spent a number of years doing volunteer work around sex offender treatment. And one of the things, and so I kind of I knew going into this whole thing with psychopathy, I was like, oh, I know where this is going. I already did this dance, 20 years ago. And I watch brilliant treatment professionals have to quit their jobs and go into lobbying to try to get, the laws changed and all that stuff. And one of the things, and I'm all for people voting and exercising their right to choose laws and stuff, but there are some things that people maybe shouldn't actually be voting on. And one of the things when Jessica's Law came out and went on the ballot, I did what I always did at that point, and now I don't have time to do it anymore, but I read through the text of the entire thing, and I called the people that I was like, tell me I am not reading this the way I think I'm reading this, because this is horrible.
What is Jessica's Law?
So Jessica's Law is the thing that says that sex offenders cannot, so first of all, they have to be released to the county in which they were convicted. So if you, say, lived in Los Angeles, but you had gone up to San Francisco, you had committed a crime in San Francisco, you have to be released in the county of San Francisco as opposed to, your former county of residence. But they also had to be, they could not live within 1,000 feet of a park or a school. And I went, I live in San Francisco. There is nowhere here that is not within 1,000 feet of, and all of the, and one of the, sorry, I'm going to take a breath because it upsets me so much that there was one place. I don't know if it's still, I haven't lived in the city for, since 2012, but at the time that the law passed, there was literally one spot in the entire city that was that far away. And it was like a bridge by the Amtrak bus station, like the only place. So there was there ended up being this whole encampment of people who'd been convicted of sex crimes. And the other thing is, that is actually a huge factor in recidivism, right? If they don't have stable housing, they are more likely to reoffend. Number one, but number two, they don't have a permanent address, so we can't keep an eye on who's supposed to be in the neighborhood. And things actually got way worse in the sex crimes area. And there were a bunch of us that we were like, no, you can't do this. There were, all the sex offender treatment people for all of the major cities. I know, certainly San Diego and probably Los Angeles, all of the people who had these, who were treatment professionals in these large urban areas were like, you're going to force this population into homelessness. And even if you don't care about them as people, they are now going to be more likely to reoffend. Good job, guys. And so I went off the rails with that one. Sorry. It's definitely, it's a sore spot for me. And I just when you try to exclude people like that, it really just makes problems worse.
Yeah, agreed.
I guess we're gonna take a big right turn. One of the things, again, I love that Inigo was saying is people with psychopathy being easily bored. And I'm wondering if that is also your experience.
Yes. And I think it's so common on the Discord. It's crazy how much people just get on to say that they're bored. It's every couple days, somebody's crashing out from boredom. I think that it's because, I have kind of a theory about psychopathy. It's not entirely uncontroversial that psychopaths have a weak sense of self. To kind of back up, I think of all personality disorders as being developmental disorders of the personality, of identity, of a sense of self. That we're not born with a sense of identity, where it's I am Jamie, I am, this honest person, I am this religion, I am this gender, I'm American, I am educated in this way. These are the things I respond to. I'm a fan of the, whoever sports teams that you're a fan of. All these kind of identity markers that we kind of build up this sense of self. We're not born with, we kind of acquire them. We learn about ourselves, we understand ourselves, but psychopaths kind of don't have it. That's the kind of difference between them and other personality disorders. A narcissist may have a false sense of self that they portray to the world, and then an inner sense of shame, and a borderline personality person may be very much like a chameleon, but have a strong sense of self, really be committed to the fact that this month that they're emo and it's,
Sure.
all these are my favorite bands and these are whatever. But they have that strong sense, but it's going to change in a month maybe, or it's going to change in a year. It's very dynamic, let's say. It's not a very stable or consistent sense of self for borderline people. And for psychopaths, it's just very low. It's just a very low connection. And sometimes to kind of explain it, I think, it's when you take things personally, you usually take things personally because there seems to be some part of you that's implicated that you care about. And psychopaths don't take things personally. And it's because there's not some part of them that's implicated that we care about. It's kind of like another example I use is like most people don't care about their shoe size. They don't feel personally connected to what size shoe they are, but they do feel personally connected to other things. Like they feel personally connected to maybe their waist size, or other parts of them. They're like, I feel shame attached to this, but not the fact that my shoe size is this, like there can be facts about you that you just don't care about.
Right.
And other facts that you care a lot about, that you take very personally, that you consider them core aspects of yourself. For the psychopath, there's just really kind of like no sense of having like core aspects. Everything's kind of like shoe size, everything about me. Yeah. Gender, whatever is just something that happened. It's like, it's like my social security number. I don't, I know what it is, but I don't feel any type of way about it. I don't feel like it's a reflection on me.
You're not offended by your social security number?
No. Yeah. If somebody was like, that's a stupid ass number, I'd be like, yes. And if somebody called me ugly, I'd be like, sure. Like it's that level of disconnection from the things about you, like an awareness, but not an emotional connection to the things around you. So I think because you're not taking anything personally, it cuts both ways. You're also less likely to be engaged in whatever else you're doing, your job, your relationships, your hobbies. You're like, why are you doing anything? That's the boredom, I think.
Yeah. I mean, that's something, a friend of mine who, is also like, I tend to, gravitate. I mean, surprise. I think we all sort of gravitate towards people that we can really, connect with. So like, I tend to gravitate towards, highly verbal, women with autism. Like, oh my God, shock. Right. And so, one of my friends who is also on the autism spectrum, and she's been a huge, she's got 3 neurodivergent kids, and she's been, doing special education advocacy for ages and ages and ages. And that was one of the things, like, she and I started working on this sort of like an easy breakdown of like autism versus psychopathy, because people often they often confuse them. And while there are some differences or some similarities, they're probably, again, they're sort of polar opposite when you look at like the two things. And that is one of the things that we actually had put in our breakdown, was that people with psychopathy are easily bored. Whereas people with autism and there are people who have comorbid ADHD might be a little bit different, but like, I'm never bored. I always have something really interesting to do. And I think that's, like, it's, my God, my kid used to complain about being bored all the time, just all the time. And you're like, we have an entire internet. Like, what? How are you bored? I loved your interview with Madam Halloween, and I loved when you guys had that moment where you talked about being surprised that empathy was other people having literal feelings about other people. You guys were like, wait, what? You mean you actually feel that? Like, you were so shocked. And I
don't believe it.
Well, I had the opposite experience. So again, autism spectrum, but I also have something called mirror touch synesthesia. So like, if I watch somebody get hurt, I feel it in my body. Like, I have been literally watching something on the screen, and somebody will like break their arm or whatever, and I will just double over in pain as I'm watching it. And I didn't find out until, I think it was either last year or the year before. It was like, wait, what? That's not empathy? Like, this whole time I thought everybody could feel it in their body and that was empathy.
Now imagine this, that the psychopathy researchers that are interested in treatments are like, what we need to do is get them to that point where
Right.
they can't watch somebody breaking their arm
Right.
without feeling the pain. It's so arbitrary and crazy.
Have you ever seen A Clockwork Orange?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I mean it's very much like what they do to Alex, where when they put him through the Ludovico technique, and he has so much pain that he can't even defend himself because he just gets so, so like tortured by the idea of physical violence. And I just I wouldn't want anybody to feel that. I mean, let's maybe not have people doing that to each other, but I don't know that having somebody else feel something that awful is I wouldn't wish that on anybody. It's it's not a good feeling at all.
Yeah. And I just highly doubt that they can do it. That's the one thing about me that after therapy, the two things, I guess, I still don't feel guilt. I'm not sure why I don't feel guilt. Maybe it's because I kind of say that shame is the way that people, shame, or people shame you when they expected you to behave differently than you did.
Right.
They have a concept of you and what you have done is inconsistent with that. So they're shaming you. Right. Guilt is you violated your own self-conception. I have a self-conception maybe of being honest and I've lied. Therefore I felt guilt. So I'm not sure why I don't feel guilt. It could honestly just be that I just don't bother pretending anymore. I have a personal mantra of being 100% myself 100% of the time. I'm not always perfect, obviously, in doing that. But I'm not interested in doing anything other than being myself as much as I can. So I don't feel guilt, but I also don't feel empathy. The empathy is a hard no on me and it's not changed. And maybe it's a window of development or something that I missed and I just can't get back there at all. I am curious, if they were, looking for test subjects, people who haven't ever experienced empathy. And they're like, would you like to try this nasal inhaler of this or something?
Right.
I'd be sure, we'll try this nasal inhaler of this.
Right.
But I'm also kind of why do we think that is important?
Yeah.
I'm curious too, but I don't think it would change my life. And even if it did change my life, I'm not sure it would change it for the better. What is the thought, the connection there is the interesting one for me. So that's interesting to think about Clockwork Orange.
That's a really interesting question to ponder, is would that actually change your life for the better?
Why are they fixated on it? I just wish they would move on.
Right.
Try something different.
I mean, and again, all of that stuff that you it hurts. Why do you want them to hurt? Right? I mean, I understand, sure, that you maybe want, I think the, I think I might get myself in trouble here, but I think another major feature of chicken people is, I think they are inherently lazy and don't want to put a bunch of work in. And so I think the reason that they're so fixated on empathy, and I have no evidence or data to back this up, this is just purely an off the cuff sort of opinion here, but I think what they want is for you to just fucking behave and do it with the least amount of effort on their part.
Yeah. Midwestern.
Yeah. I mean, I don't see that there's any other, I mean, and usually I can come up with dozens of scenarios as to what might explain somebody's behavior, but they really are fixated on, actually my son said something really interesting once when we were talking about what, I think he was under 21, over 18, somewhere in there. And one of the things that he was saying when we were talking about, consequences and empathy and whatnot, what he said was, if they don't feel an emotional consequence, they need a physical consequence.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, that is like, I think the chicken people rely on emotional consequences to have everybody behave a certain way. And they don't know what to do when, the rest of us aren't, say, for instance, shamed.
Yeah. Shamed. Yeah. Shame's a big one. It's interesting thinking about shame, the way that it's been used, like just historically in criminal justice. The theories behind kind of what we do to not even to punish people necessarily in criminal justice, but what is our response to them have changed over the centuries. But there was a time around the time that they're doing like the shaming, like the stocks, putting people in the stocks. And this was interesting to learn. Yeah, is that some of it was more the idea that kind of like you could suffer a nutritional deficiency of like vitamin A or something, and it would lead to a bad result. That they had a theory that crime arose from a deficiency of a sense of community with other people. And so therefore, having you in the stocks was a way for everybody to see you and to reintegrate you in this very concentrated way back into the community and society, so everybody can kind of look at you and understand, here's somebody who needs more community. We need to put this person on our radar. They're in this situation. We're watching them. We're aware of them. They're more aware of us. And that was like the kind of idea. So it wasn't even like, when we look back on some of those things and think it was mostly shame oriented, it wasn't even shame oriented back then. A lot of it was like this sense of like your role in the community and how do we reintegrate you back in the community to where you don't feel like you need to be committing crimes basically, or acting in these kind of antisocial ways. So I think the shame thing, people often defend shame to me, and it's like kind of sickening. The things that they'll suggest are the reasons why they will intentionally shame people, dehumanize people, do all these like terrible things to people kind of in the name of pro-social behavior.
Yeah. My, God, one time my son was in kindergarten and he came home, like kids go to school and then they do the things that the other kids do. And anyway, one of the things that all the kids in his school would do is, ooh, shame. And I, was like, hey, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. And then finally one day I just lost my shit. And I was just like, oh my God. I said, what is wrong with you? Why would you wish shame on another human being? Shame is the absolute worst emotion that any human being can possibly feel. Why would you wish that on another person? And he was like, oh, okay. And then he went to school and got all of the other kids to stop doing ooh, shame.
Nice.
He was like, I went to school and I told all of the kids what you said about shame and they have stopped doing this thing.
Love it.
Like, damn. But yeah, I mean, shame is such a horrible, horrible feeling. And it's something like it's something you can only do to yourself too. Right? Like it's always self-focused. I mean, sure, you could have, probably any parent who's lost a child would probably argue like, no, the grief of losing a child is probably worse than shame. But, I was having an emotional moment and my emotions got the better of me, but it was a really interesting social experiment to see, like these children had it explained to them that shame was a terrible thing to have to feel, and that it was a very unpleasant for the person who's feeling that, and that you shouldn't wish the unpleasant thing on another human being. Like, that's pretty cool. Also, in your interview with Madame Halloween, you guys were joking about feeling gaslit about effective empathy, and how people were projecting their own feelings onto you. So I think that's probably more accurate than not, because like one of the things that used to happen with my son, and I think happens certainly with other, like, definitely with children, maybe with adults as well, but like the treatment professionals, right? They'll be like, "Oh, you just aren't engaging with your feelings. You're just not in touch with your feelings. You know, if you just start thinking more about the emotions, like, you'll recognize that you're feeling them and you won't disconnect from them." And you're like, no, I don't feel the thing.
Mm-hmm. That can be a hard thing when the expectation is that you're going to have a particular emotion, especially I think for children. Like, how messed up is it that we impose on children an expectation that they have a particular emotional reaction?
Yep. Yeah. I think about that a lot, actually, about like apologies, right? Because we constantly, this is something we do with kids now. I certainly didn't, I mean, I don't know, I wasn't really a misbehaving child, so maybe other kids had to do this and I just didn't. But the idea of like writing an apology letter, which is another, like, we expect them to lie, right?
Yeah.
We expect people with psychopathy to lie and say they're sorry, even when they're not. And like, you're supposed to feel this emotion, and if you don't feel that, you're wrong. Which is,
You're wrong, and we're going to punish you socially.
Right. Right. I would love to, this is not on anywhere on my list of questions that I wanted to ask, but we've sort of circled around it a couple of times. There's a dude called Dr. Friston. He is in the UK, and he came up with this thing called the free energy principle. And it says that basically every living being, and then whether that's humans or plants or, you know, single-celled organisms or whatever, right? The sort of thing it is to like be alive is to try to conserve as much energy as possible, and to try to stop getting surprised, right? I didn't say that right, but like trying to avoid surprise, right? Because then anytime you get surprised, then, oh my God, it's all this energy, it's stuff you weren't expecting, you've got to like figure this out, and, you know, bloody, bloody, blah. And I actually, I think that is what is behind a lot of the boundary pushing with people on the psychopathy spectrum, because chicken people are not consistent. They are not consistent with their boundaries. They will tell you, if you do X, I'm going to suspend you. And then the kid does X 17 times. And then finally on the 18th one, they get mad and then they suspend them. Like, I think I think the boundary pushing is more of a actually trying to figure out where the boundary is.
Yes, maybe. I will say that the thing that is most reliable to trigger me for like normal people, I usually think it's fear. For me, it's that I think that I'm already doing the right thing, quote unquote. Like I'm
Right.
doing the safe thing, the chicken safe thing. Like no chicken person will bother me because I'm already adhering to their little rules or expectations. And they come in and still try to shame me. If I feel like I'm not even doing anything and they still try to like chicken impose consequences on me, then I will lose it. I will like completely lose it. Like to where my mind just like ceases to be rational at all. Just rage, gray rage, maybe, or just like, that's it. I'm going to become a hermit. Gray rage. Gray rage is like a specific type of this kind of disengagement, like very sudden disengagement, I would say, from even trying to like put up any sort of appearances of being normal and a normal functioning part of society, which is kind of like, the larger umbrella. But gray rage specifically is somebody who doesn't have authority over me, seeks to assert authority over me. And when that happens, then like often, especially if I'm caught off guard with it, then it's like, again, the mind pauses. There's no rationality. There's just like this sense of like rageful, like you can't do this to me. Like it's very childish. It's very petty, but it's also very kind of like, it's the most impulsive thing that I do. It's like the least, I have the least amount of control over it. It's like almost feels like I'm in a fugue state where it's like, I talk about it in my book where like this happened once with this Washington, DC metro worker. Triggered it so bad in me. I was like, but it had like all the kind of aggravating factors. I already thought I'm not doing anything. It was like somebody who was like a janitor was like giving me a hard time about walking on an escalator that had broken, even though escalators that break just turn into stairs. He kept kind of harassing me. He tried to shame me about it. He, like all these kind of aggravating factors where I was like, you are going to like push me over the total edge. And he did. And for like minutes, I stood there like in shock, kind of just like, and then I was like, I had just like the one thought of just following him. And just like the thought of like wrapping my little hands around him, because he's like bigger than me. I'm little. I'm like this little like woman, like wrapping my hands around him though, and just like strangling his neck, because it was just such a primal response to like fight or flight. It was like fight 40 out of 10.
Sure.
In response to like, and why is it that my wiring perceives that as a threat? Who knows why it's like, this is the worst thing that could possibly happen to you. You definitely can't, accept this. But it's interesting. I follow a lot of kind of Black excellence social media accounts, and one of them that I follow, Kev on Stage, there was a street fight, they were boxing, I think that maybe they had gloves or didn't have gloves, but it seemed pretty organized. Like it wasn't like a fight, it was like meant to be boxing is what it looked like. At one point, the guy on the right, he submits, he kneels, and he actually kind of wraps his arms around the legs of the other guy, the guy on the left, kind of like in the submission, like, you've hit me too hard, I'm out of it, like, please don't hit me again, kind of submission state. And the guy on the left, like, gives him like some pelvic thrusts, so as if he's like,
oh my God,
like in a sexual manner. Yeah. Like guy's hanging off his legs and he gives like these pelvic thrusts. And Kev on Stage, even though he's like this right way guy, usually that I admire for a lot of reasons, was like, that's it. That's the end. That's the end of your life. Like you could never live that down. You would have to go find that person and kill him. The guy on the left. Wow. And so it's so funny. People probably listen to me kind of say this and think, what a terrible thing, just because somebody said don't walk on the escalator. But everybody has this, I think, where it's like there's something that just like somehow chemically or electronic, like, the signals in your brain, whatever it is, electric, not electronic, where you, it's just kind of like there's a short in your wiring that just kind of like bypasses the prefrontal cortex or something. and all you're acting is from instinct, and that just happens to be my trigger. Somebody could, like sexually violate me, and it probably still would not trigger me as much as somebody who has no authority over me seeking to exercise authority over me in that moment, with add some of the aggravating factors, the shaming, the I already feel like I'm doing my utmost to abide by the chicken feelings of others.
Right.
And still they want to shame me about some stuff.
Right.
So yeah, that is my that's my trigger for sure.
So how hard was it for you to not strangle this guy? Because I assume you didn't.
Honestly, like, I don't know that I could. There happened to be so many aggravating factors. I was tired. I was traveling, like I had a long day of masking, like all these ways that would have made it so bad. Like my willpower was like in, the smallest amounts. And already like the amount of willpower to kind of like overpower something like that is like crazy amounts. So I was at a crazy deficit facing that. Luckily, it was so shocking that I stood there like in shock for, it must have been a long time, because by the time I kind of sort of started in motion again, he was already like 30 feet in front of me, and I ended up losing him in a crowd. It was like I was very thankful. But after it happens, you are so like wiped out. It's almost as if your body has flooded. It's like your body has told you there are 10 lions attacking you. And that's how kind of chemical it is to experience it. You just feel totally overwhelmed by like the body's response to what it perceives as the threat. And it really is, like I say this thing about, oh, it's terrible that you can kill your spouse, your cheating spouse, and get off or whatever. But honestly, like, if I had strangled him and I went to jail, I'm sure they would have like, I don't know, not cared that I was a psychopath, or it would have been worse, in terms of sentencing me. But I also kind of think I really had like little to no control. I don't think I could have stopped myself, because I'm like a smart person, like a pretty smart person.
So it wasn't even necessarily that you stopped yourself. It was just
no. It's just like if it's somebody hits your elbow and then, the reflex or hits your knee, it felt totally reflexive. Like it, like not even like 99%. It felt like 100% reflexive, at least in the moment, at least for several minutes. It was like I couldn't have stopped myself if I wanted to.
Yeah. I've talked to people who were like, well, yeah, but I've never punched anybody in the face, or I've never done this, or I've never done that. I'm like, you know what? I have killed exactly how many people I've ever wanted to in my life. That number just happens to be 0. Right? So it's like, okay, good for you that you've managed to not do anything that you've never wanted to do. Like, yay. Like, I also haven't gone out and plucked a turkey, like a live turkey, because I've never wanted to, right? Like, it's just, I have no idea why I came up with that as an example. That was really weird. But I mean, I guess, that's like, people don't really think about that, right? Like you have, and especially, because my wheelhouse is more children, right? Like, and especially if we teach people as children how to deal with this, then, we don't necessarily have the problems down the line with adults. But like, how many, you're upset that little Johnny, threw a truck across the room, or, hit one of the kids at his work table or whatever. But like, how many times did he override that impulse throughout the day, right? How many dozens of times, or how many hundreds of times? And then he just couldn't anymore. And that's, like, that's something I think people should really think about more, right? It's like these impulses, like, they're not, just because like, not everybody gets them, and that's really great for you that you didn't get them, but like, how hard is it that, how many hundreds of times a day is somebody trying and then they slip the one time and it's like, I put all of this energy into, into masking or acting, as I like to call it. Like, it's, that's what we're doing. And I am curious, when you are going about your day and you're like at the, I don't know, the doctor's office or the grocery store, or you just run into somebody that you haven't seen in a long time, and they're like, "Hi, how are you?" So like Inigo, he was like, "I just smile at people, and I say I'm fine, and that costs me nothing." So I'm wondering, when you, whether we're calling it masking or lying or acting or whatever, when you put that on for these other people, does that cost you anything?
Yes, I hate small talk. I mean, good for him that he can like smile and say whatever. I often will try to tap into like a true desire I may have for like human connection. Or I do enjoy certain things. I like to seduce people. I like to read people or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I try to tap into that and be like, let's see if I can like get this store clerk or whoever to smile, give myself little projects.
Sure.
To make it more fun. It's like hiding the medicine in like the whatever, adding the sugar to the medicine or something.
Spoonful of sugar makes the medicine go down.
Yeah.
I love that word. Julie Andrews, who just passed.
Did she?
Yeah. Like a couple days ago.
Dang it.
I almost,
Julie Andrews.
Oh my God. I almost was like, we're recording this on this day. And I'm like, she's still going to be dead. She's still going to be dead by the time this goes up. Like, that's not going to have changed. I really love too that you said you have notes that you go back and read when you have low motivation, to remind yourself why it is you do what you do. And I am wondering if you could tell us a little more about that and share any other strategies that you use to keep yourself on the straight and narrow, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I feel a little bit like the Memento guy, where it's like, it is a little bit hard. I think it's hard. There's a lot of reasons why having low sense of self is hard. Low engagement, I think, tendency towards boredom, a couple of these other things. And also like kind of like the word that you used earlier, like an inability to be reprimanded and care about the being reprimanded with the indigenous Alaskan people term.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're like being hurt or whatever, but it doesn't really matter to you. It doesn't really kind of bother you that you're getting kind of usually punished or experiencing these negative consequences.
Right.
So how can you integrate some of the lessons that you've learned about yourself or the world? Like, how can you stay kind of motivated or stay kind of remembering some of this stuff,
Right.
Because it's not, with this, the sense of self is so, let's say, smooth and ill-defined that it's hard to get stuff to stick to it.
Right.
Like, it's hard to like have it, to influence it in kind of any sort of way. So yeah, I do have like notes. It's not a perfect system, and I just keep trying stuff. But there's certain things that I will sometimes do. Sometimes I like to go through like my photos of particular things. Like, it really has to be like this constant kind of memory thing. It's sort of nice to be this way, because I feel like every day I wake up, for instance, and still choose to love my girlfriend, who's also a psychopath, still choose to be with her. And actually she's coming home soon. So I feel like we have to wrap this up soonish.
Okay.
But it's nice to feel that way, because I feel like this sense of freedom, like I can turn on a dime, like I can just kind of like go a completely different direction and do something completely different tomorrow, and kind of feel no sense of obligation to my former self or future self, because I don't feel really any connection to my former self or my future self. In other ways, though, it is like the Memento guy who is just this amnesiac, the movie Memento, where it's hard to have like any long-term plan that you stick to, and things that you've learned work for you, you know, that it's like hard to kind of remember. So yeah, I guess the notes, I try to keep the notes, and you know, it's something I need to start doing too recently. I've fallen away from doing the notes. You know, I need to get back into it. I need to like get back to doing the things that I enjoy and prioritizing those things. So it's definitely a double-edged sword.
Yeah, I mean that's actually what I was thinking. You know, if I just, you know, imagining what it's like to have zero motivation, to, you know, be like there's no emotional anchor, I think.
Yeah.
For you guys to have a particular, I mean, I think everybody with psychopathy has their own internal code, and as long as you know what that code is, you could probably, you know, they're relatively predictable, but there's also not, there's not that same emotional motivation that the rest of us have. And I was wondering, like, how do you, when you're not motivated, how do you remember to motivate yourself to read through the notes?
It's terrible. Yeah, the emotional, the social engagement or sense of connection. There's so many kind of things, motivations or reasons why a lot of people do anything that I don't experience. I also feel too that I feel like in some ways I have a very low sense of self, even amongst psychopaths,
Right.
Other psychopaths that I know. And so I feel like I experience it worse for some reason that they do, that there's this, it's not like this emptiness in this sense of like kind of an emo darkness. It's just like this very like the quietest little sound signal. You're listening to music on like 1 out of 50 volume or something and trying to kind of understand it at that low level where you can just like certain things you just aren't picking up on, you know, you can't engage with it because it's just such a low signal is kind of what it feels like. And so just like, or like watching a movie from like 1,000 feet away where you're just like constantly squinting,
right,
and trying
yeah, I mean,
trying to understand it.
That's something that I've definitely, like, if we were all, you know, a cell phone, right, like most people have a volume between 1 and 10, and people with psychopathy have at most like a 3, you know, but it's usually down more towards like 1 and 2. And then, you know, those of us with autism, like our speaker's broke and it cranks to 11, right? And you get all the feedback and you're like, ah, right? Yeah, I mean, I love that you said the thing about the low signal, because I think that's, you know, like, how can you, even if you could sort of like, okay, I've got like a, you know, you've seen them, like the thing in cartoons, you know, the big horns that they'll put by the ear, the old people will be like, what, Sonny? Could you talk louder?
Yeah.
Like, even if you had one of those things, like, how effortful is that for you to have to constantly be trying to listen through all of this other noise?
Yeah, and it's not one and done. It's every day. Every
Yep.
day it's like a new, okay, you know. Like I often complain like that, well, when I feel badly, let's say, then it feels like I'm just, all of life is just brushing your teeth to me, you know. And people will be like, yeah, in those moments though, I just enjoy the nice things about life. And I'm like, but what is it about the nice things that make it nice?
Right.
You know, like if you have no connection to even the fact of your existence, hardly, like a very, very low connection.
Right.
And you have like no, especially now, I don't have religious beliefs anymore. You kind of don't feel like anything happens afterwards. And you're like a little suspicious that your view and perspective of reality and life are distorted anyways. It's like it very
Right.
quickly seems to not matter at all. And then how do
Right.
you stay engaged in that? But and this is what Herbie Cleckley said too, is that like, even if a psychopath kind of suggested something about like suicide, then they like rarely actually act on it, because like, what's the point of doing that too?
Right.
That's, at least you're kind of like, this is like a lottery ticket and something crazy could happen. But you can kind of see how like novelty seeking becomes a thing, because this boredom, this sense of boredom, like, how can you alleviate the boredom? The answer is different for every psychopath.
Right.
And for me, it's like, it's hard. It's a everyday, brushing my teeth type thing, where it's like, okay, let's put in some real effort to try to re-engage with the world. Like, I probably spend at least 3 hours a day on average, just focused on re-engaging with the world, just trying to get myself to connect to something that I'm doing that day.
That's horrible. That is exhausting.
Yeah.
I mean, and like I almost, this is again one of those things where I feel like, those of us on the autism spectrum have more in common with those of y'all on the psychopathy spectrum than we do with neurotypical people, right? Like, I can spend that 3 hours a day, but from the opposite side. Like, it's too much for me. The bright lights, like, I've got, obviously I've got enough light that we can see me, but it is costing me something. They're like, my eyes are pulsating behind my little TBI glasses here, and my head is pounding, and my brain is definitely going, gah! Right? Like, I'm not having a great time, and it's very effortful for me to sort of tamp that down, but I almost think it's probably easier to tamp it down than it is to ramp it up.
Yeah, hard to know. I haven't experienced the opposite. It doesn't feel like suffering, though. It really just feels like, almost like, man, what would be a good example? Like when your foot's like falling asleep or something. Yep. And there's kind of just like the lack of sensation, or like your mouth is numb. It's just like this, it's not a numbness in like this way. Yeah, it's like knowing that the thing is happening. Like, it's not a numbness and actual sensation. It's just like a lack of caring about it. You're not taking it personally.
Right. It's a lack of sensation.
Not even just a lack of sensation, but like a lack of desire to pay attention to it. And even if you are paying attention to it, a lack of meaning that you're assigning to it, a lack of interest, a lack of engagement,
right?
A lack of, like, one of my favorite emotions to experience is being tickled, like not physically tickled, but like tickled pink about something. Like, I love to be tickled. Sure, novelty, or like, just something charming. For that reason, I like to be around children. So usually, that's, as I'm saying this, I need to spend more time around children, is what I'm realizing, because I've been in a little bit of a slump.
Kids can be just, because they are who they are. Right? Like, you're
not masking. They're so charming. Children are so charming. They're coming up with all sorts of interesting ideas. They're like the opposite of chicken people.
Yeah. Yeah. One time my kid, he comes up to me and he hugs me on my arm and he goes, "You know what I love about you, Mama? You have fat skin." And I was like, "What? What?" And he's like, "Not like Shawnee's mom. Shawnee's mom has skinny skin, but you have fat skin." And he just like hugs my arm, and I'm just like, oh my God. But also, he was just being like, it's something he really loved about me. And I was like, okay, I guess that's that.
Yeah.
I'm actually wondering how much, so you and Madame Halloween were talking about the aphantasia you guys have.
Yeah.
I also have this thing, but the way that my whole system sort of exists is because I can't visualize it. My whole body imagines itself in the thing. And so I have this, sort of the opposite that you guys have, where I've got much more of a sense of self, and I'm just Like I'm trying to imagine if I couldn't feel all of those things when I was imagining myself in that situation, like how would I even have a sense of self if you don't have that for feedback?
That's interesting. I have really enjoyed meeting you and talking with you. And it's so crazy hearing that you listen to the YouTube videos. Thank you for that. That's so nice of you to do. I really appreciate that.
I really enjoy them, and I love that you're out there, representation matters. Representation
absolutely.
Matters.
100%. That's what my girlfriend says every time we watch a female lesbian psychopath movie.
That's awesome. So definitely next time we talk, because I'd love to do this again at some point. Definitely, I would love to talk to you more about your crisis of faith, because that is super fascinating to me. And I do notice that there are a lot of people on the psychopathy spectrum who do turn to religion as a framework.
Something as a way of engaging. I would love to.
Okay, awesome. So thank you so
out.
much.
I'll chat you soon.
Okay, sounds good. Bye.
Later.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Fearful Symmetry. We don't upload on a regular schedule, so now is the time to subscribe if you haven't already. In veritate mutatio. In truth, change.